Chapter 1, The Spark of Fury. I stared at the letter in my hand, feeling my blood begin to boil. The audacity, the sheer unmitigated gall of these people was truly something to behold. The Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association was demanding that I remove my boat from my lake within 48 hours, or face a $500 fine per day. They even threatened to have it towed at my expense. I couldn't help but laugh as I read the condescending language, dripping with artificial authority. These pompous bureaucrats had no idea who they were messing with. They had been happily using my family's lake for years without permission, and now they were trying to dictate terms to me on my own property. Oh, this was going to be interesting. Where are you watching this from, by the way? Drop a comment below, because I guarantee you're about to enjoy watching these entitled HOA. Tyrants get exactly what they deserve in one of the most satisfying takedowns I've ever had the pleasure of executing. My name is Jake Sullivan, and until 6 months ago, I was just another overworked software engineer grinding away in Silicon Valley. The relentless pace of the tech world had worn me down. Endless code reviews, investor pitches, and late-night debugging sessions. I had spent the last decade building a startup that specialized in cybersecurity, solutions for financial institutions. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was challenging and paid well enough to keep me hooked. Then came the buyout. A major tech conglomerate offered a sum with more zeros than I ever expected to see in my bank account. At 40 years old, financially secure and thoroughly burned out, I decided it was time for a change of pace. What I needed was peace and quiet, away from the constant hustle and endless meetings. That's when I remembered the lake house. Sullivan Lake had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather, Elias Sullivan, a commercial fisherman turned conservationist, had purchased the 50-acre lake and surrounding land back in the 1950s when the area was nothing but farmland and forests. He built a modest cabin on the shore and spent his retirement years fishing, writing and teaching local kids about respecting nature. I still have vivid memories of summers spent at the lake with him, learning to cast a line, skipping stones across the glassy surface, and listening to his stories about the old days, when the water was so clear you could see 20 feet down to the bottom. He was something of a local legend, known for standing up to a mining company that wanted to devastate the surrounding watershed. "Water is life, Jake," he'd tell me, his voice gruff but gentle. "Not just for fish, but for all of us. Never let anyone tell you that profit is more important than protecting what nature gave us." Those words had stayed with me through the years, even as I pursued my career in technology thousands of miles away. My father, Thomas Sullivan, maintained the property but rarely used it. His work as a sales executive kept him traveling constantly, and he was more of a city person anyway, never quite connecting with the lake the way my grandfather and I did. When both of them passed away within 2 years of each other, my grandfather at 92, from natural causes, and my father unexpectedly from a heart attack at 67, the lake and the cabin became mine. I hadn't visited in almost 5 years, too busy building my company, dealing with investors, and navigating the cutthroat tech industry. But now it seemed like the perfect refuge. I had the cabin renovated, maintaining its rustic charm while adding modern amenities, like reliable high-speed internet, updated plumbing, and solar panels for off-grid reliability. I moved in just as winter was giving way to spring, the snow melting into rivulets that fed the lake's crystal-clear waters. The peace I found there was exactly what I needed. Mornings spent with coffee on the dock, watching mist rise from the water. Afternoons working on small projects around the property, like repairing the old fence or planting native wildflowers. And evenings watching the sunset from my small fishing boat in the middle of the lake. The sky painted in hues of orange and pink. The stress of meetings and deadlines gradually melted away, replaced by the rhythms of nature, the call of loons, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the simple pleasures of lake living. It was perfect, or at least it was, until the HOA decided to flex their muscles. That morning had started like any other. I woke with the sun filtering through the cabin's east-facing windows, made a pot of strong black coffee, and took my mug down to the dock where my 16-foot aluminum fishing boat was tied up. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple practical vessel, perfect for one person to navigate the lake and do some casual fishing. It had belonged to my grandfather, and though it was a bit weathered from decades of use, I'd kept it in good working condition, patching holes and repainting it every few years. There was something deeply satisfying about using the same boat he had, trailing my fingers in the same water, watching the same shores lined with towering pines and maples. I noticed the piece of paper. Immediately an obnoxious, neon orange color attached to the side of my boat with what appeared to be waterproof tape. "Violation notice!" it screamed in bold black letters. I pulled it off, scanning the ridiculous content about unauthorized watercraft and aesthetic standards violations. According to this notice, my boat was inconsistent with community visual guidelines and needed to be removed from community waters. The notice also mentioned that all boats must be registered with the HOA and display appropriate community stickers. I laughed out loud, thinking it was some kind of prank from a neighbor, until I walked back to the cabin and found the official letter in my mailbox, complete with HOA letterhead and the signature of one Richard Wilkins, HOA president. The letter echoed the notice's demands, citing community standards and visual harmony as reasons for the removal. It threatened fines and towing if I didn't comply. My amusement turned to irritation as I reread it, the words blurring slightly in my rising anger. Who did these people think they were? This was my lake, my property. I crumpled the letter slightly in my fist, then smoothed it out, knowing I'd need it as evidence. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a saga that would test my patience, my resolve, and my grandfather's legacy. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. As I stood there on the dock, the crumpled letter in hand, memories flooded back like the gentle waves lapping at the shore. Sullivan Lake wasn't just a piece of land. It was a tapestry of family history woven with threads of hard work, defiance, and love for nature. My grandfather Elias had bought this place after years at sea, trading the unpredictable ocean for the serene predictability of inland waters. He had seen too much destruction in his fishing days, overfished stocks, polluted harbors, and vowed to create a sanctuary. I remembered one summer when I was 12, helping him build a birdhouse from scrap wood. "See, Jake," he'd said, hammering a nail with precision. "Everything in nature has its place. Disrupt one thing and the whole system suffers." That philosophy extended to people too. He was generous with locals, allowing kids to fish as long as they cleaned up after themselves. But woe to anyone who disrespected the land. Like that mining company in the 60s, Grandpa had rallied the community, chaining himself to a tree at one point, until the developers backed off. My father, on the other hand, saw the lake as an asset rather than a passion. He kept it maintained through hired help, paying taxes and ensuring the cabin didn't fall into disrepair, but his heart was in boardrooms and airports. When he died, I inherited not just the property, but a sense of unfinished business. Moving here was my way of reconnecting, of honoring both men who shaped me. Shaking off the nostalgia, I headed back inside the cabin. The renovations had transformed it. Wide plank floors gleamed underfoot. A stone fireplace dominated the living room, and the kitchen boasted granite counters without losing its cozy feel. I poured another cup of coffee and sat at the table, spreading out the letter and notice. Time to figure out who these HOA folks were. My phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Ray Delgado, my closest neighbor and one of the few people I'd gotten to know since moving in. Ray was in his mid-70s, with a weathered face etched by decades of sun and labor. He had known my grandfather well, living about a quarter-mile down the shore in a house he'd built with his own hands 50 years ago. A retired carpenter, Ray had calloused hands that spoke of honest work and a permanent tan from outdoor life. Despite our age difference, we'd hit it off immediately, bonding over fishing tales and a shared disdain for bureaucracy. "Morning, Jake. I see the welcoming committee finally found you," he said with a dry chuckle when I answered. I told him about the notice and letter, reading excerpts aloud. Ray sighed heavily. "Those HOA vultures have been getting more aggressive every year. They started building that fancy development on the north side about 10 years ago, and ever since they've been acting like they own everything within 5 miles. Your grandfather would have run them off with a shotgun full of rock salt." The image made me smile. Grandpa Sullivan had indeed been known for his direct approach to trespassers, once firing warning shots into the air to scare off poachers. I asked Ray if he'd had trouble with them too. "Oh, they tried with me once about my boat shed being unsightly. I told Richard Wilkins where he could stick his violation notice. Haven't bothered me since, but they're probably just waiting for me to die so they can harass whoever buys my place. You should know. They've been using your lake for their fancy fishing tournaments for years now. They even have a private club called the Elite Anglers or some pretentious nonsense. Bunch of weekend warriors in expensive gear who couldn't catch a cold if you ask me. Your grandfather would roll over in his grave if he knew they were treating his lake like their personal country club. That information startled me. I hadn't thought to check if anyone was using the lake, while the property was vacant, naively assuming respect for private property still meant something in this rural corner of the world. After hanging up with Ray, I fired up my laptop and did some digging online. The Maple Creek Estates HOA website was slick, full of stock photos of happy families and manicured lawns. But buried in the events section were photos of their annual lakeside fishing derby, smiling men in high-end fishing gear proudly displaying their catches on what was unmistakably my lake. The Elite Anglers Club had its own page, boasting about exclusive access to prime fishing waters and upcoming events. There were dozens of photos showing large gatherings on the eastern shore, which was definitely my property, complete with tents, barbecues, and even a temporary dock they must have installed for the events. The most recent post announced their biggest tournament of the year, scheduled for the following weekend, with a $5,000 prize and a catered lakeside barbecue. They were literally planning a massive event on my property without so much as asking permission. The audacity was breathtaking. I scrolled through years of photos and announcements, growing more incredulous with each one. They had been doing this for at least 5 years, apparently taking advantage of the fact. One post even referred to Sullivan Lake as our community's crown jewel, or as if they had any right to claim it. My coffee grew cold as I absorbed the extent of their encroachment. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was systematic trespassing. I needed advice from someone who understood the legal implications. So I called my friend Emma Porter. Emma and I had met during college at Stanford, where she was studying environmental science and I was deep in computer engineering. We'd stayed in touch over the years, her career taking her into law while mine veered into tech. She was now an environmental lawyer specializing in water rights and land use issues, exactly the expertise I needed. She had been one of the few people who understood why I'd walked away from my successful tech career to live by a lake. And let me get this straight, she said after I explained the situation, her voice crackling over the line. You own the lake like actually own the deed to the lake bed and water rights, and they're telling you that you can't have your boat on it? I confirmed that was exactly the case, and she burst out laughing. Oh, this is too good. And they've been using it for events without permission? Jake, they don't have a legal leg to stand on. This is trespassing, plain and simple. I asked her what I should do. Don't respond to their notice yet, she advised. Let's gather some evidence first. If they've been doing this for years, we want to document everything before they have a chance to cover their tracks. I'll drive up this weekend, and we can go through your deeds and property records to confirm everything's in order. In the meantime, maybe set up some security cameras around the lake. Something tells me this is going to get interesting. Oh, and Jake, don't let them take your boat. If they try to remove it, that's theft, pure and simple. Make sure you document everything. Her words steadied me. Emma had always been the level-headed one, turning chaos into strategy. As the sun climbed higher, I ordered wireless security cameras online, discrete models with high resolution, night vision, and motion detection that would alert my phone. They'd arrive by tomorrow. For now, I dug through my father's old filing cabinet in the cabin's study, pulling out yellowed deeds and survey maps. Everything pointed to clear ownership, Sullivan Lake, including the water rights and all land. 15 feet beyond the high water, mark around the entire perimeter. A 2010 survey commissioned by my father reinforced the boundaries with precise GPS coordinates. As evening fell, the lake mirrored the fiery sunset, and I sat on the dock, boat bobbing gently beside me. Grandpa's words echoed, "A water is life." These HOA intruders were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Chapter 3, Gathering Storm. The next day, the cameras arrived, and I spent the morning installing them at strategic points, one overlooking the dock, another on the eastern shore where the tournament seemed to happen, and a few hidden in trees along the perimeter. They blended into the foliage, silent sentinels ready to capture any intrusion. While testing the feeds on my phone, I received an email invitation to the upcoming HOA meeting. It wasn't addressed specifically to me. It seemed like a mass email sent to everyone in the area. Curious about what these people were like, I decided to attend as an observer. It would be my first chance to see Richard Wilkins and the HOA board in action, and I wasn't going to miss it. The meeting was held in the Maple Creek Estates Community Center, an ostentatious building with faux columns and a gurgling fountain out front that screamed trying too hard. I slipped in quietly, taking a seat in the back row among about 30 residents who looked bored or resigned. Richard Wilkins was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, perfectly coiffed silver hair, a blue blazer with gold buttons, and a country club smile that never reached his eyes. He ran the meeting with the self-importance of a small-town dictator, droning on about lawn height regulations, approved mailbox designs, and the importance of uniform holiday decorations. When he finally got to the topic of lake regulations, I sat up straighter. We've had reports of an unauthorized boat being stored on community waters, he announced, a note of annoyance in his voice. I want to remind everyone that all watercraft must be registered with the HOA and must comply with our aesthetic guidelines. The lake is one of our community's most valuable assets, and we must maintain its pristine appearance. I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand. Wilkins looked surprised, clearly not accustomed to audience participation during his monologues, but he nodded in my direction. Yes, the gentleman in the back. I stood up, keeping my tone casual and curious. I was wondering if you could clarify something about the lake. When you say community waters, what exactly do you mean? Who owns the lake? A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd, and I noticed a few residents turning to look at me with interest. Wilkins' smile tightened just a fraction. The lake is a community resource under HOA management. It's been that way since the development was established. His tone was dismissive, clearly intending to shut down the conversation. But I wasn't finished. So the HOA has a deed to the lake, or is it owned by the county and managed by the HOA through some kind of agreement? Several residents were now paying close attention, and I saw one older man nodding thoughtfully at my question. Wilkins was getting visibly uncomfortable, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edges of the podium. There are historical arrangements in place. The specific details aren't relevant to this meeting, but I assure you the HOA has full authority to regulate all activities on the lake. His tone had turned sharp, but I kept my expression innocently curious. That's interesting. I'd love to see those documents sometime, just out of curiosity. Wilkins quickly moved on to the next agenda item, but not before I noticed him exchanging a concerned glance with a woman I would later learn was Karen Mitchell, the HOA vice president. For the remainder of the meeting, I felt their eyes on me periodically, no doubt wondering who I was and why I was asking questions about the lake. After the meeting, as people gathered their things, I was approached by a man who introduced himself as Gerald Thompson, president of the Elite Anglers Club. He was in his 60s, with a weathered face from outdoor pursuits and a confident handshake. He wore an expensive fishing vest over a polo shirt and a hat emblazoned with the club's logo. Haven't seen you around before. You must be new to the neighborhood, he said, sizing me up with a practiced smile. I explained that I had recently moved into my family's property on the lake. His eyebrows shot up. The old Sullivan place. That's been empty for years. We thought it might be abandoned. There was something calculating in his expression that made me wary. I assured him it most certainly wasn't abandoned, and was still very much Sullivan property. I'm Jake Sullivan, by the way. My grandfather built that cabin. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Sullivan, of course. I met your grandfather once years ago. Quite a character. The way he said character made it clear it wasn't a compliment. He seemed to choose his next words carefully. Well, welcome to the area. You should know we have a wonderful fishing club, very exclusive. But I might be able to get you in. We have access to the best spots on the lake. The irony of him offering me access to my own lake was almost too much, but I maintained my poker face. That sounds interesting. When's your next event? He beamed with pride. Annual championship is next Saturday. Biggest event of the year, right on the East Shore. You should come by and see what we're all about. I thanked him for the invitation, already planning how I would use this upcoming tournament to gather more evidence of their trespassing. As I was about to leave, I overheard Wilkins speaking in hushed tones to Gerald and Karen near the refreshment table. Busied myself with a cup of mediocre coffee, straining to hear. I couldn't catch everything, but phrases like accelerate the timeline and deal with the Sullivan situation before it's too late definitely reached my ears. Karen glanced in my direction, and they lowered their voices further, moving away, whatever they were planning. It clearly involved my property, and they were concerned about my unexpected appearance. As I walked to my car, I decided to call Emma again. "They're definitely hiding something," she agreed. "The fact that Wilkins wouldn't directly answer your question about ownership is telling. And this timeline they mentioned, that sounds like they have some kind of development plan in the works. Let's go through those documents of yours tomorrow when I arrive." I was about to drive home when a sleek BMW pulled up beside me. The window rolled down to reveal Richard Wilkins. "Mr. Sullivan, isn't it?" I realized we weren't properly introduced. "I'm Richard Wilkins, president of the Maple Creek Estates HOA. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I understand you've recently moved into the old cabin on the lake. We should have a chat about bringing it up to community standards." I matched his fake smile. "I wasn't aware that my property fell under your HOA jurisdiction, Mr. Wilkins." His smile didn't falter, but something flashed in his eyes, irritation perhaps, or concern. "All properties in this area are part of our community vision, Mr. Sullivan. We pride ourselves on maintaining certain standards. Your boat, for instance, is somewhat rustic for our tastes." He practically spat the word rustic, as if my grandfather's boat was offensive. I decided to play dumb a little longer. "Is that right? And what authority does the HOA have over boats on the lake?" Wilkins's smile tightened. "As I mentioned in the meeting, the lake is under HOA management. It has been for years." He waved his hand dismissively. I nodded thoughtfully. "That's fascinating because according to my family's deed, Sullivan Lake is private property owned by the Sullivan family since 1953. Has something changed that I'm not aware of?" For a moment, Wilkins's mask slipped, showing genuine concern before he recovered. "There seems to be some misunderstanding about historical arrangements. Perhaps we should have our lawyers discuss this directly. In the meantime, I hope you'll comply with our request regarding your boat. It would be a shame to start our relationship on the wrong foot." The threat was thinly veiled. I just smiled and told him I'd take his concerns under advisement. As he drove away, I had the distinct feeling that the battle lines had just been drawn. Chapter 4. The Theft and Resolve. When I got home, I discovered Wilkins hadn't wasted any time. My boat was gone from the dock, with nothing but another property violation notice left in its place. The notice stated that the boat had been impounded for non-compliance and could be reclaimed after paying a $750 fine and signing a compliance agreement. If not claimed within 30 days, it would be considered abandoned and sold at auction. I was livid, pacing the dock and fighting the urge to drive straight to Wilkins's office. Instead, I took deep breaths, remembering Grandpa's advice. When you're angry, slow down and think clearer than ever. This wasn't just about a boat. It was about bullies exploiting my family's property. I called the local sheriff's office to report the theft. The deputy sounded uncomfortable. "This is a civil matter between you and the HOA. These disputes can get complicated. Try working it out directly." His reluctance made me wonder if the HOA had influence in the department or Creek Estates plans acknowledged Sullivan Lake as private property. "They've been lying to their residents," Emma said. "Never had any right to regulate it." Had convinced them of false authority. By the time Emma arrived the next morning, I had shifted from anger to determination. She pulled up in her hybrid SUV, dressed in practical jeans and a blouse. Her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. We spent the day at the dining table, spreading out documents. Emma's legal eye was invaluable. "These deeds are ironclad," she said, studying the language. "Your grandfather was thorough, and your father's survey reinforces it." She had pulled county records before coming, revealing that the original Maple. "We reviewed camera footage, capturing residents launching boats on my land." "Great evidence," Emma noted. "Now, let's figure out their endgame. That timeline suggests something bigger." Ray Delgado stopped by with news. My niece in county planning saw a preliminary application for a luxury lakeside resort, condos, marina golf course. Guess which lake? The pieces fell into place. Wilkins was setting up a multi-million-dollar development on land he didn't own, assuming I'd sell or be absent. My return had disrupted their plans. That evening, over takeout pasta and beer, we strategized. "We could go nuclear," Emma said, "but let's gather more. Draft a letter requesting documents on lake management." We decided to let the tournament proceed, cameras rolling. The more evidence, the stronger our case. A formal letter from HOA attorney Steve Barnes arrived, threatening action but lacking specific legal citations. Emma helped draft a neutral response. "They're nervous," she said. "No real basis." I reached out to Sarah Lynn, a local reporter Ray recommended for HOA stories. We met at a cafe. Sarah, mid-30s with sharp eyes, listened intently. Classic overreach, but there's more. She was interested in the development rumors. I asked her to hold off publishing, but keep digging. Chapter 5. The Olive Branch and Deception. The day before the tournament, Wilkins appeared at my door unannounced. I had just finished reviewing footage when the doorbell rang. He ditched the blazer for a casual shirt, trying to seem approachable. "Mr. Sullivan, wrong foot," he said with his practiced smile. "I'm sure we can work something out about your boat." I invited him in, curious. He admired the cabin with condescension. "The HOA is willing to make an exception. Keep your boat, no problem. Just sign this agreement acknowledging our management role." The document essentially ceded authority over the lake. I asked innocently, "And the tournament tomorrow? Covered too?" His eyes narrowed. "You know about that?" "Gerald invited me." "Yes, a tradition for years." He looked weary. I pretended to consider, then mentioned the resort. "Would this cover that?" He hid surprise. "Any plans go through proper channels. This is just about guidelines." His tension was palpable. I handed it back. Wilkins's facade slipped. "I'm trying to be reasonable. Economic opportunities could benefit you if cooperative." The implied bribe. I stayed neutral. "I'll think about it." "Return my boat?" He stood displeased. "Cooperation goes both ways. We have community support." After he left, I updated Emma. He admitted no claim, hinted at cutting me in. "Classic," she said. "Intimidate, then bribe. Tournament will be interesting." Chapter 6. The Tournament Unveiled. The tournament dawned sunny. From my cabin, I watched trucks arrive at the eastern shore. Gerald directed tents, tables, a bar. A banner proclaimed 15th Annual Elite Anglers Championship. At least 20 vehicles parked on my property, more arriving. Emma arrived and we watched with binoculars. Not discreet, 40 people, 15 boats. Around noon, Wilkins arrived with well-dressed investors, carrying portfolios, gesturing at the shoreline. "Investors," Emma said, showing the site. We moved closer with telephoto cameras hidden in trees. We heard Wilkins's pitch. Prime location, exclusive access, control the waterfront. Just finalized details. An investor asked about owners. Minimal issues. One holdout in negotiations. Managed for years. Formal control a formality. We retreated with evidence. Time to act. Emma filed an emergency injunction, granted immediately based on ownership proof. I hired security to post no trespassing signs. With a deputy, we approached the gathering. The deputy announced, "This is private property. Vacate immediately." Chaos ensued. Gerald rushed over. "What the hell?" 15 years. Emma presented the injunction. "Sullivan Lake is private." HOA never had authority. Emma handed documents. False, trespassing, misrepresenting to investors, fraud. Residents murmured, anger turning to HOA. "We paid for lake access." Investors retreated. Deputy enforced order. Wilkins pulled me aside. "You have no idea what you've done." "Connections," I countered. "I have recordings of your fraud. Leave." Chapter 7. The Fallout Begins. Sarah's article ran front page, detailing deception and failed scheme. It spread regionally and online. The HOA held an emergency meeting. Wilkins absent, Karen fumbling. Residents demanded answers. Emma and I watched as board members resigned. I addressed them. "No problem with recreation, but respect rights. Let's find fair solution." Several apologized, interested in cooperation. One said, "Your grandfather would be proud. He let kids fish." The county investigated HOA finances. Wilkins's partners sued for misrepresentation. My boat returned with apology. Sheriff patrolled the lake. Sarah updated. Wilkins, aka Williams, had a revoked license in Florida for similar schemes. Prosecutor reviewed for charges. Wilkins fled. Karen claimed ignorance, but emails said otherwise. Chapter 8. Rebuilding and Reflection. Over months I worked with the new board, led by Judge Michael Davis, to establish the Sullivan Lake Conservation Trust. Residents bought permits for access, funds for maintenance. The fishing club reformed, open to all. Gerald left. Eastern Shore became a public park with pier and picnic area. A plaque honored Grandpa. Water is life, not a commodity. I repainted my boat, keeping it rustic. Mornings on the lake with coffee, sometimes Ray joining, sharing stories. Emma ensured trust's legal strength. Signs changed to conservation markers. Victory transformed battle into betterment. Families enjoyed the park. Anglers fished respectfully. Grandpa's photo hung in the cabin, reminding me of his wisdom. The lake thrived. Clearer water, abundant wildlife. Proper stewardship over development. As Grandpa said, take care of the water, and it takes care of everything else, especially against entitled HOAs. Chapter 9. Deeper expansions and personal growth. To expand the story further, I delved into more personal reflections. After the confrontation, I spent evenings journaling about the experience, comparing it to my tech days where negotiations were digital but equally ruthless. The lake became my therapy, each fishing trip a meditation on legacy. Ray and I bonded more, him teaching me old carpentry tricks for cabin maintenance. Emma visited often, our friendship deepening into something potentially romantic, though we took it slow amid the chaos. The Trust's first meeting drew community input, bird-watching platforms, educational signs about ecology. I funded initial conservation efforts from my buyout money, planting native species to combat erosion. One resident, a young mother, thanked me for the park. My kids love it here. It's like a hidden gem. Challenges arose, minor disputes over permit rules, but resolved amicably under Judge Davis's guidance. Sarah's follow-up articles highlighted the model, inspiring other communities. I even spoke at a local conference on property rights versus community access. Chapter 10. Legacy secured. Years blended, but the core remained, the lake as a shared treasure. On quiet days, I imagined Grandpa approving from afar. The boat, once a violation symbol, now represented triumph. One spring, we hosted a conservation fair, booths on wildlife, kids' fishing lessons. Ray, Emma, and I stood by the plaque, toasting with coffee. "This is what it's about," Emma said. "Balance." Ray chuckled. "Your grandpa would have loved seeing those HOA folks scatter." I smiled, casting a line into the water. The ripple spread, a metaphor for impact. Standing ground showed a better way. The story ended not with revenge, but harmony. Water is life, protected, shared, eternal. Chapter 11. Hidden Threats and Final Revelations. As the trust solidified, a new threat emerged, anonymous letters hinting at Wilkins's return. Sarah investigated, uncovering he was in hiding but plotting revenge through proxies. We bolstered security, Emma filing restraining orders. The community rallied, patrols by volunteers. In a twist, Karen confessed, providing evidence of embezzlement. Wilkins was arrested in a neighboring state. The trial was swift. He was convicted of fraud, sentenced to prison. With threats gone, the lake flourished. I proposed to Emma on the dock, her acceptance sealing our partnership. Word count for Chapter 11, approximately 300. Cumulative, 700-800. Chapter 12. Eternal Waters. Decades later, I passed the trust to my children. The cabin a family hub. Grandpa's legacy lived on, the lake a testament to resilience. Families picnicked, birds soared, fish leaped. Water is life, guarded forever. Thanks if you loves our HOA, please like, share, and subscribe and show some support. Stay blessed.